are so special. Children are born good, and we have always seen that children add a lot of color, they add a lot of fun, and then they add a lot of life into our homes. But many times we see that children are seen as a burden. Children are seen as messy children. Children are seen as unruly. Children are seen with behavior problems which are absolutely not acceptable. So this morning as we talk, in the previous talk we've been talking about how we need to reset our priorities and put first things first. So during this talk, we are going to talk about how we understand and how we gracefully handle children. You may be a teacher, but before you're a teacher, you're a parent. So as parents and as teachers, we need to understand the mind of children. We need to understand what children need. We also need to understand where children struggle. We also need to understand where children have blocks in their own minds, then they behave in the way they don't want to behave. Sometimes they do what they want to do, sometimes they do what they do not want to do. And their understanding their behavior is a little confusing. So I have brought in a little bit of psychology, and I have taken a lot of biblical verses which substantiate those psychological principles. And I always have a policy that we will not teach or advocate any psychological concepts that do not go in harmony with God's word. So as we learn to understand children, we have to also understand that none of us have become parents after training. We may be trained teachers, but we all learn by making mistakes. There are a lot of trial and error as we understand children, because no child is the same. Every child is unique, every child is different, every child's background is different, every child's genes are different, and every child's perspectives are different. The way children understand life, the way they respond to life is very, very different. So understanding children is a big art by itself. It will come by practice, and there are certain things that we need to keep in mind. So whatever we have learned from our parents, consciously or unconsciously, we bring it into our parenting styles. Sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're right, sometimes they fit into today's culture, or sometimes they may be totally out of date. You know, in our minds we feel, this is how we were grown. This is how we were brought up. This is how we obeyed our parents. When our parents gave us a stern look, we got scared and our knees were knocking. But today's generation are not like that. So we need to understand that just the methodologies of how we apply the same principles are different. Otherwise, the methods are the same, the principles are the same, but the way we communicate certain things to our children, the way we discipline our children using different methods are going to be different. So it's a challenge to parent our children with a lot of grace, and we need to bend them when we can. In parenting our children, we are actually teaching them how to parent their own children. So whatever we teach them and whatever we fail to teach them, whatever we consciously or unconsciously teach them and miss out teaching them, is going to pass on to the next generation. So we have to be really conscious about what we do to our children. Oftentimes we don't even are aware of what we teach our children, and we understand that every child is unique. My child is my daughter is my critic, and she always tells me, "Mommy, you do this, you say this, but you do not do this. I think you have to correct yourself there." It is a blow on my, the way I feel about myself. I feel I'm doing the right things, but when I take her correction seriously, I become a better mother. Most of our children's behavior is learned, and they learn it from media, they learn it from society, they learn it from teachers, or they learn it from friends and cousins. They learn it from different places. So we have to bring all of them into a filter And as parents and as a family, we need to sit together and filter all those things and take in what is acceptable according to the biblical way and patterns. You know what I have always understood that our society has failed to understand is, when a flower doesn't bloom well, we try to meddle the flower. When a child doesn't behave well, we spend a lot of hours talking to the child, telling the child how the child has to improve, telling the child, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that, lot of rules and regulations we give the child. But if a flower doesn't bloom well, it is the environment that has to be changed. It's the environment that has to be made different and not the child. We don't meddle with the flower. It's the same with children. The environment has to change. Teachers have to change. Parents have to change. The way we relate to children has to change. The way we understand and communicate understanding to our children has to change. I always think of a bamboo seed. Every time we sow a bamboo seed, it stays quiet and dead for about 5 long years. That is what research and agri-science tells us. Okay, so the farmer feels, I have to be quiet and waiting for 5 long years after all these seeds I've sown. It's a long wait. But after those 5 years, it starts sprouting like that and it grows very, very fast. That happens with our children. As parents and as teachers, we just have to encourage ourselves that every seed that we sow into children, every verse that we tell into children, every word that we speak into children, every minute that we spend with children is not going to go waste. It looks like it's going to go waste. It looks like children are absolutely not responding. It's all gone and forgotten. But it's not like that. Children do remember, and it is all there inside of them, and the Lord will make it grow. One day it is somebody who waters it, and the Lord will make it grow one day. I think of a rainbow now and then, because when I counsel children in my 25 years of counseling experience, I feel every child is different, every environment is different, every parent is different, and the kind of difference that we see is like you have to rewrite your counseling books and the MPhil that we've learned and all that we have written in books. It's absolutely different from what we learn in the books, because children can be so different. I think of a rainbow. Lord, thank you for creating a rainbow, because a rainbow is not just blue in color. It's not just violet in color. It's not just yellow in color. It's not red, just not red in color. If it was, it will be just a streak of red or a streak of blue on the big blue sky, and it will be boring. But God in His wisdom, God in His awesomeness of creation, He's made the rainbow beautiful with 7 beautiful colors, just to tell us that every child is different. Variety brings a lot of colors into our lives. So when we deal with children, one word that we need to remember is the uniqueness of God's creation. Uniqueness of God's creation. Sometimes I have heard parents say, every child does this. Why is my child alone behaving like this? And I don't like this behavior in my child. My relatives' children are very good. My other children are very good. My cousins are good. Her classmates are good. But why is she like this? Because your child is different. This is something we need to understand, because God's plan for our children are also different and unique in the way He applies it. Okay, now as we go into this talk, there are some very, very vital areas I'm going to talk about this morning. You may know some of them, but I may throw a different light. So I want you to just sit back, relax, and as you listen, I also want you to understand and reflect on your teaching styles, on your counseling styles, and on the way you relate to children as parents and as teachers. The first question that I want to ask you this morning: do you actually have a relationship with your children? Are you able to relate with them? Are you able to identify with them? If you have a toddler child as a parent, we need to become a toddler child. If you have a kindergarten child, as a parent, please become a kindergarten parent. If you have an adolescent, please step into an adolescent's shoes and feel how it feels to be like an adolescent. Are you able to identify with them? Because the relationship with our children starts right at conception, according to Psalm 139. So make your kids feel wanted. Make your kids feel important, and that is very, very important. Our children's brains, they grow till they are 28 years. But many times we feel, I was a very well-behaved child when I was your age. Why is my child like this? Every child can be different, as I said. Children are not supposed to be well-behaved. It's a very difficult truth, my friends, that I want to tell you this morning. They are not supposed to be well-behaved because they are exploring the world. They are exploring people. They are exploring feelings. They are exploring emotions. They want to exhibit behaviors. They do not know how to show their emotions. That is why their behaviors are heavy. They just do what they feel they should be doing. So when they are doing this, this is when they are actually finding boundaries. Can I go this far? Can I say this word and get away with it? Can I behave like this? Can I raise my voice so much? Can I jump around like this? Can I talk to my parents like this? Can I use these words to elders like this? Is this the social behavior that is acceptable? They push you as much as they want and see how far they can actually push you. So this is a time when we have to tell them, these are your boundaries. These are your limits. This is where you need to stop. So when there is a storm, you have to tell them, this is how you stay calm. Children do not know how to stay calm because they are seeing something else at home. They are watching something else at home. I told you in the beginning that most of our children's most behaviors are learnt. So they learn it from somewhere. But when they actually exhibit those behaviors, we are taken aback. We say, no, this is not acceptable. But when children turn back and tell us, Mommy, you do the same. I have an example to tell you. When my daughter screams a little bit, when she was 14, she does scream. And I tell her, baby, you shouldn't be screaming. You can tell Mommy softly. But then she said, Mommy, you scream too. It came as a hard reality, a hard talk. It came as a slap on my face. But then I took it. I said, thank you, Lord, for telling me through my daughter. My daughter has been a revealer. It's been an eye-opener. So I changed my ways. So we need to have a relationship with our children. And when you do that, we need to spend a lot of time with them. And that's very important. And when you spend time with them, do spend a lot of quality time with them, because that is when you understand the needs that we have. When you want a relationship with your children, the most important thing is understand their needs which are hidden. 3 important needs quickly that I want to tell you this morning is, one is the casual need, which is the food, water and all that. Then comes the critical needs, which are needs for entertainment, needs for oxygen and all that. Then comes the crucial needs, which are the psychological needs, which is a security, a self-worth and a significance. Children have these 3 needs which are very, very strong. A need for security, a need for self-worth and a need for significance. What is security? When your child spills milk, if your child is going to pull the carpet and just quietly soak the milk in the carpet, the child is not a secure child. But if your child is able to come running to you and say, Mommy, I'm sorry I spilled the milk. Mommy, I'm sorry I made this mistake. Mommy, I am sorry I broke this beautiful glass. If your child is able to say that, the child has a secure relationship with you. When children go wrong, they should have the freedom and the liberty to come and tell you that it is okay to be wrong, to come and tell you that they spilt their milk. So security is a feeling that you give them that they always belong to you. Children need that sense of belonging. My mom and dad will accept me with all my failures, with all my weaknesses. When I go wrong, I continue to be their child. And many times I have seen in families and parents throwing words at children. You are a waste. You are good for nothing. You are senseless. Hasn't your brain grown enough? Why do you behave like this? So that is a time when children take all those words as truth. When those words keep coming back at them, they keep hearing those words again and again, and it becomes reality to them, and they start believing a lie as the truth. So my friends, we need to give them something called a self-worth, which is called importance. They are important to the family. They are worthy. With all their weaknesses and with all their lack of strengths, with all their strengths, they are very, very valuable to the family. They need to feel significant to the family. We need to communicate to them that they are very important and that the family is incomplete without them. That is something we need to keep telling them. So security, self-worth, significance. Where do we learn this from? This is what God gave us. God gave us security. God has made us feel valuable because we are His children. And God has made us feel significant because He has given us an ultimate responsibility of fulfilling His purpose in this world. God put Adam and Eve in the garden. He felt them secure. He gave them security. But when they sinned, that security became insecurity and they were out of the garden. They had no more boundaries. The boundary that God put for them inside the Garden of Eden was that you can do all this, you cannot do this. This is what our children need. They actually feel very, very secure with rules. They feel secure with boundaries. They feel secure with relationships. When Adam and Eve sinned, this security became insecurity. And they had to go and work. But after the cross, God gave Adam and Eve and all of us, He's made that low self-worth which they lost outside the garden, He's given it back to us by every drop of blood that He shed for us on the cross. So what is Evangeline's value? Every drop of blood that was shed on the cross is my value. So children will understand when bullies are bullying them, when people are teasing them, when words are thrown at them, they don't have to take it literally because I have a God who calls me my own. I have a God to whose family I belong to. This kind of a truth is something we need to understand and teach children. So when we correct children, we need to tell them that we do not accept that behavior, but we accept the person. God hates the sin, but He loves the sinner. This gives them that significance and it gives them that security, and that's very, very important. Now, when we have a relationship with our children, our relationship should be so vital that when it is added with rules, it brings out a response. So I'll just give you a very simple formula. Relationship plus instruction or rules is equal to response. Relationship minus rules is equal to a reaction. So when you have a relationship, children obey better. Children listen to you better. Children understand you better. Children accept themselves better and they respond better to situations. But when we only give them instructions, when we only give them rules and do's and don'ts without a relationship in the scenario, then there is a reaction. Then there is a rebellion. Then there is aggression. Then there is crime. Then there is a lot of disobedience that we see in children. So it is very important that we understand that every time there is a problem with children, we have to go back to the roots. Is there an insecurity in my child? Where have I gone wrong? please sit down and talk to your child. Go back to that relationship and ask your child, this is your behavior that I've seen. There is a pattern that I am seeing. Is there a problem? Come, let's talk about it. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 says, train up your child in the way he should go. So training and taking care of children, grooming children, nurturing children, parenting children is a very, very vital responsibility given to teachers and to parents. There is a new theology and a new concept. Children should be given a choice. Children can choose their behaviors, they can choose their diet, they can choose their lifestyles, they can choose their haircuts, they can choose whatever they want, they can choose the kind of schools they want, they can choose their friends, they can choose their faith. No, they are not emotionally mature enough to make such choices. So it is the parents and the teachers' responsibility to help them choose, train up a child. This did not come from a random person. We cannot give children a choice. It comes from a wise man, and we need to take it from this wise man. And he says, train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it when he is old. Okay, so have a relationship with your children by giving them security, by giving them self-worth and significance, and let them feel wanted and important in the house. The next area I want to dwell on, there are so many things that we can talk about children, and because it's a different world and children are very, very difficult to understand. So I've just picked up a few for this morning. The second area I want to talk about that our children need today is the area of communication. Our children spend a lot of time on the screen, with their mobiles, with their laptops and on the TV, because they do not have anybody to talk to. This I have seen in my counseling experience. Children tell me, Mommy and Daddy are very busy, Auntie. They do not have time to talk. They are doing different things, Auntie. They do not spend too much time with me. This is a sad statement. Please do spend a lot of time with your children and communicate to them. And there are also children who say, Auntie, I do not want to talk to my parents because when I do, they give me lectures and they are boring, Auntie. They don't listen. They don't really listen. What is the depth of our communication to them? What are we talking about? Children have a lot of questions to ask. They have a lot of curiosity that is going on. Please do set aside time and leave aside everything else when your children want to actually talk to you. And this is very, very important, because when you talk to them and when you let them talk, they bring out things that you have absolutely not expected. When I spend time with my daughter, she tells me about her boyfriends. She tells me about sex. She asks me about sex. Today is a time when children have to be given the freedom to talk about anything they want. Parents are the safest place where children can talk to parents. Home is the safest place for children to talk. There was a little child who came to the father and asked, Daddy, how much do you earn in your office per hour? And Daddy said $50. And the little child ran. She brought her piggy bank and broke it and showed Daddy, Daddy, there's $50 here. Why don't you take this money and give me 1 hour of your time? The dad was in tears. This is the reality of many homes today. Children, parents, please do spend time, quality time with your children. You know what? When children come back from school, or when children come back from a party, or when they come back to you, come back to the home after tuitions, they may not say, Mommy, I had a difficult day today. Mommy, I did not understand this. Mommy, this is what happened on the way. They will say, Daddy, can you play with me? That's communication. That's how children communicate. They ask for attention. They ask for your time. And when they play with you, they slowly start talking stories. That's why I told you in the beginning, if you do not have a relationship with your parents, with your children, if you do not give them that security that children can share anything with their parents, then they are not going to bring out painful secrets that they may have inside. When you communicate to your children, please do give them a lot of verbal appreciation, give them a lot of verbal expressions of love. Tell them I love you. Tell them you are awesome. So give a lot of appreciation, give a lot of encouragement, give a lot of positive strokes to your children every day like a vitamin tonic. Now why am I saying this? Because every page of the Bible says I love you. I love you. I love you. This is not a Western concept, my friends. Give your children a lot of hugs. When you give them a lot of physical hugs, physical appreciation, physical love, children will not look for it outside most of the time. Most of the time, unless there is a very different problem. And when I talk about communication, I also want to talk about the tone in which parents and teachers communicate to your children, because the tone in which you speak, that becomes their inner voice. Now I am a testimony to this because my parents have been missionaries, and they've been missionaries for about 50 years, and every time they tell me something which when I was an adolescent, when I was a child, and all the values that they have taught me. Today I am 50 now, and it comes to me ringing in my ears. It comes to me as an inner voice. I can hear their tone. Some of their tones have been really harsh. Some have been really gentle. So the tone in which you speak to your children, that becomes their inner voice which your children keep hearing. So please be as gentle as possible. Please give them a lot of security in your communication. Give them a lot of love. Give them a lot of appreciation. Give them a lot of encouragement when you talk to your children, and that is very important. When your children talk about sensitive issues like molest, like abuse, like sex, when they talk about all this, this is a time when most parents block it with advice. They say, don't talk about this. This is too much for your age. We are not able to answer all these. We didn't talk like this to our parents. Why do you talk about all this? Do your friends talk about all this? Then don't talk to all these kind of friends. No, my friends, this is an age of curiosity. This is an age when their hormones are haywire. Their hormones are all over the place. Our adolescents are actually called walking hormones. When hormones change, feelings change, thinking changes, everything changes, behavior changes. So when children struggle with the way they handle their feelings and their behavior, we need to give them a safe place to ventilate. We need to give them a safe place to talk about it. This is your limitation. This is a place where you can talk. This is a place where you can clarify your questions, ask your questions, anything sensitive you can tell your parents. There are some children who come to me and cry, Mommy, Auntie, it is my own father who is abusing me sexually when mommy goes for duty in the night. My mommy is a night nurse, Auntie. So when she goes, my dad abuses me. I am not able to tell my mommy this. What do I do? There are stories like this. So this is a time when teachers can beautifully come into this scenario. This is a time when teachers can be a bridge and talk to the parents. But please, teachers, have a relationship with each child. Spend about 5 minutes a day with one child. Just ask the child with a little smile. I understand that you have to keep professionalism, a working relationship in balance. When you also counsel a child, you do not have to have a problem or a low grade to call a child and talk to the child. You just have to spend a few minutes smiling. Hold the child's hand and say, teachers are here for you. Mommy is here for you. Daddy is here for you. Anything you want, you can share. We are all here to talk to you. Is there anything that's going on in your house? Why are you dull today? Why did you forget your book today? Did you come in a hurry? Was there anything happening at home? Is daddy drunk? What's happening? Let the child talk about it. We may not be able to give immediate, easy, practical solutions to the child, but the child will have a lot of release when the emotions are out. There are 3 minutes, 3 times a day you can spend with your child for parents. Parents, when you wake up your child, don't switch off the fan. Don't open the windows. Don't tell them, don't sleep like a log. Don't do this. Get up, get up, get up. Don't be lazy. When we do this to the child wakes up with a bad mood. Go and lie down with your child. Tell your child, what are your plans for today? How are you going to handle today? Have you finished your homework for today? So who are you going to meet today? What are your things going to be today? Tell me about it. We'll just ask the Lord to help us. We'll pray about it and give the child that assurance that you are there with the child to face the whole day, and the Lord is there with their child. So just give them this assurance. The first 3 minutes when they wake up from bed, wake them up with a good mood. The second 3 minutes that you can spend with your children is when they come back from school. Remove your shoes, put your thing in the washing, your uniform in the washing machine, get ready for tuitions, your tiffin is on the table, finish it off and have your coffee. These are all your regular things that we talk about. This becomes very, very legalistic. It becomes very ritualistic. Parents, teachers, please, when children come back from school, just get their bag and put it there. Sit with your children. Give them a hug. I'm so glad to see you back today. Lovely. How was school? How was your way back to school? How was friends today? How was your time in school? Were teachers nice to you? Were your parents nice to you? Were your friends nice to you? Talk to them and let them talk. Ask them questions. Ask them leading questions. When they give you some sensitive stories, don't probe too much, but give them freedom. Give them a comfortable situation so that they will understand that you understand. When we probe too much, children get a little blocked. And the third 3 minutes is when you put them to bed. Even if it's adolescents, go and lie down with them, pray with them, and talk to them just about nothing. You don't have to always ask leading questions. Just talk nothing. Tell them your story. Tell them how your chicken got burnt. Tell them how you lost some 50 rupees on the way. Tell how your automan behaved with you. Just tell stories. And they will come up with their own stories. You know what? There are children who talk about their molest during those times. My daughter, when she was an adolescent, she used to say during bedtime stories, Mommy, she was only 7 at that time. She would say, Mommy, a boyfriend gave me a I love you note, Mommy. What do I do? I was shivering inside. My God, she's only 7 and I never got an I love you note till I was 18. And what's happening to this generation? But then I had to quieten myself. I asked the Lord for wisdom. I spoke to her and I told her, just ignore it. It's okay. You know, this is what happens as you grow. You will feel different towards the opposite sex. So don't worry too much about it. Just ignore it. And be friends with everybody. Don't be friends just with one boy. And today she tells me, Mommy, you told me that. And I made a lot of good friends. And because there are other children who made it a big issue, who were crying and who were really upset because they were not able to share it to their parents. So this is something we need to understand. So as parents and as teachers, please do take time as a family together and separately with your children. When you have more than one children, please prepare the ground for children to open up to them, allow free talk and listen to them, and teach them also respectful communication. That is very important. Teach them to say, please, thank you, and I'm sorry. But this we need to model. Only then children are going to learn it from them. The second aspect that I want to talk to you about this morning is the aspect of handling emotions. Handling emotions. How do you teach children to handle emotions? Allow them to express their emotions. As simple as that. Many times our society has taught our children, shh, don't talk. Don't say this to anyone. What will other people feel? What will they think of you? Shh, don't feel, don't talk. I am counseling addicts today. When we tell them, shh, don't talk, shh, don't feel, we are actually nurturing addicts inside the house. My parents, my teachers, this is a warning for us. allow children to vent their emotions. But in the same time, allow children to vent their emotions in a healthy way. They cannot be throwing stones. They can't be breaking plates and glasses in the house. They can't be throwing difficult words. They can't throw dirty words. They can't be shouting and screaming. But they can sit with you, holding your hands. You can give them a hug and tell them it is okay to talk about anger. It's okay to talk about frustration. It's okay to be angry. But to sin in your anger is where the mistake comes. It's okay to be angry. So give your children the freedom to talk and vent their emotions, because every emotion tells you that something is wrong somewhere. Every emotion tells you that something is wrong. Many times we teach them control, but then we don't teach them how to ventilate their emotions. In 1 Peter chapter 5 verses 6 to 11, we read, please be self-controlled. Please be self-controlled. So we need to teach our children to have a very controlled emotional life by giving them the freedom to feel what they feel, giving them the freedom to express what they feel in a healthy and in a respectful way. Now there are about 3 or 4 heroes in the Bible I've picked up who had very negative emotions. There are also some positive emotions our children do not know how to handle. But then there is something which I would like to tell you as parents, as teachers. How are we handling our feelings? How are we handling our emotions? We are being watched like a CCTV camera. We are constantly under the scanner. We may think my 2-year-old is only a 2-year-old. She doesn't understand anything. She's a baby. So I am screaming at my husband. My husband and my wife, we are having a major conflict at home. The child will be quietly watching. Oh, is this how you resolve conflicts? You raise your voice, is it? It's all getting recorded in the child's brain. And as the child grows, when it wants another glass of milk, the child will raise its voice. The child is learning. So how are we learning to vent our emotions and to handle our emotions? There was this major hero called Moses. He was a friend of God. He loved God. He walked with God. He listened to God. He talked with God. He was an awesome man. God used him powerfully to bring out the Israelites. He had a negative emotion. He had a problem with anger. Did you know that? He was a person who committed murder because he wanted to resolve a conflict between 2 people. Anger again. And again when he came down from the mountain, when he saw the Israelites having an idol and worshipping and dancing indecently, he was so angry. There was a glow of light. He had spent so much of quality time with the Lord at the mountain. But when he came down from the mountain, this scenario just stirred up his hormones. He could not vent his feelings. So he was so angry that he threw the tablets which were written by the finger of God. Written by the finger of God. He threw them and he broke them. An anger episode from a hero of the Bible. We also see Cain. We've talked about Cain already. He was vengeful. He was jealous and he killed. That was a negative emotion that he learned from his own instinct. We also see this person called Jephthah. He went to war, and when he went to war, he prayed, Lord, if I win, if I have victory in this war, whoever comes in front of me for the first time, whatever I see first, I will sacrifice that to you. He did not know how to handle his excitement. When he finished the war, he had a victory. He came back. There was his daughter dancing away to glory because she was rejoicing over her father's victory. And he had to sacrifice her virginity because he had promised the Lord, he had made an oath that I will sacrifice whatever comes before me, because the Lord has given me victory. Even if it is going to be excitement for our children, even if it is going to be partying, our children should know how to handle their emotions. Sometimes they are very happy, very excited about something, and they are not able to draw lines about expressing that excitement. That is why alcohol comes in. That is where drugs come in. That is where sadness comes in, and that is where they want to dampen and quieten, and they want to bring some kind of a healing or a numbness into that pain, that they want to take drugs or alcohol. The same thing is also used for excitement. So we need to tell our children, teach our children that even without alcohol you can be excited. You can have a lot of clean fun. You can have Pepsi or Miranda or Limca or soda and have a lot of fun. That is what we need to teach our children. So it is very important that we understand when children do not know how to handle their emotions. We cannot expect our children to reach out. It is the parents' responsibility to reach out. We have to reach out to our children. I can see that you are sad today. I can see something is wrong in your face today. Come, let's go for ice cream. Come, let's go for a walk. Come, let's have a game of carom. Come, let's have a game of shuttle. Do something and talk to them. Break the ice. Tell them it's okay, ma. It's okay. Whatever you want to talk, please do talk. When children talk, emotions also get spilled out. They cry. When they cry, please do not say, don't cry like a boy. Don't cry like a girl. Please give them permission to cry. Because the Bible gives us freedom to cry. The Bible gives us liberty to cry. So please do let them express their emotions in a healthy and a respectful way. And the most important thing that we need to remember here is the issue of confidentiality. Our children will not open up or share to parents when parents pick up the phone and tell relatives or tell friends or tell the pastor or tell your church leader, this is what my child said, this is what my child is going through, I don't know how to handle it, please do something about it, please pray for my child. And the pastor will tell somebody else. Or the pastor comes home visiting and the pastor will just break the news to the child, and the child will break trust. There will be a breach of trust there. Please do not break your child's trust by breaking confidentiality. Maintain confidentiality. Whatever your child shares with you has to stay with you. It has to die with you unless it is a legal issue or unless it is very, very vital. Okay, how do you teach your children to handle your emotions, handle their emotions? The first thing is, many times children have plastic smiles. We have plastic smiles too. Now children may be in denial. No, mommy, I'm all right. No, I'll handle this. No, I'm okay. Nothing is wrong. I'm all right. That's what children will say. They are in denial. So please help them, give them the freedom and give them that comfortable place in your house to help them accept that it is okay to be depressed, that it's okay to have a failure, that it is okay to make a mistake, that it is okay to spill something, that it is okay that they've gone wrong somewhere. Let them accept that emotion first. Then when they come to that place of acceptance, next comes the place of expression. Let them talk about it. Once they talk about it, you have to tell them, teach them what is wrong and what is right. So teach them that area of confession. Confession is very important. Confess to themselves, let them forgive themselves, teach them to forgive themselves, teach them to reconcile with you, teach them to receive forgiveness from you if they have wronged you or whoever they have wronged, and teach them to receive forgiveness from God. If your child has expressed that they have gone wrong, take your child into the bedroom. Both of you kneel down by your bedside and tell your child, ask the Lord's forgiveness. If the Lord forgives you, you will have peace in your heart. That heaviness will be lifted off. So we need to teach them acceptance, expression, confession, and then comes forgiveness, which is most important. Now, the other thing that we need to understand here is, there are some children who can be really touchy, who can be easily provoked just like that. Anything can provoke them and make them angry. Usually, these children have a problem with their self-image. Now, going back to my first point which I told you, significance and self-worth. Children need to be receiving lot of positive strokes about the way they look, about their physical makeup, about their physical self-image. because as they grow into adolescence, they may not like themselves. I don't like the way my nose looks. I don't like my eyes. I have a squint. My teeth are not good enough. I have a problem in my eyes, or I have a lot of pimples in my face. I don't like the way I look. So we have to keep assuring them. When you do that, their self-image has a good ground. Their self-image is built really well. When that is not good enough, then they get very easily provoked. Or if there is physical abuse anywhere in the background, that may be one reason why your children are getting easily provoked. So we need to be really careful on that. The fourth area where we need to look at when we talk about handling children is the area of disciplining and correcting children. These days, parents are very scared. Parents are cowards. Teachers are cowards because our administration and our government is not supportive of us. If you discipline, if you spank your child, if you cane your child, you can be sued. The child can exaggerate it and give a wrong picture that this is what happened. But no, my parents, disciplining and correction has to be done, but it has to be done sensitively. When disciplining and correction is missing in a home or in a school, that is a kind of a neglect. That is a kind of an abuse. That also puts your love in question. If we really love our children, we should shape them well. It is God-given responsibility. So when you discipline your children, when you correct your children in your attitude or in their behaviors or in their perspectives or in the way they think or in the kind of words they use and everything, call them, make them sit aside. Please sandwich it with appreciation. Tell them your handwriting is so good. You look so beautiful today. You have a lovely smile. I always look at the way you carry yourself. It's awesome. And you bring so much of fun into the class and into the home. I've always liked you, my little child. But if you can change your ways here, if you can just make a small change here, it'll make you perfect. You know, if you can sandwich it with a lot of appreciation, the child understands my teacher or my mommy or daddy have not been seeing only my negative side, they have also seen my positives. So they give a lot of weightage to my positives. They appreciate my positives. That's why I said when I talk about communication, keep on giving lot of verbal appreciation and encouragement because your child's self-esteem depends on that. Your child's esteem depends on that. Tell them the Lord values them. Tell them the Lord appreciates them. And they will understand even if the world does not value them or appreciate them, God will always keep them special. God will always keep them, hold them respected. So when we discipline them, sandwich it with appreciation because when there is no discipline, there is a tremendous damage that is quietly happening in the background. Now children basically can rebel. Like I told you, they can push you and see their limits. You have to give them a place, you have to give them a boundary, tell them a limitation, tell them you cannot go beyond this, and there may be a power struggle there. They may be saying, no, what I say is the rule of the house. Children can say that, but you have to assert yourself and say no. What mommy and daddy say will be the rule of the house. Okay, when we say that, then they say that mommy and daddy always win and the power should be in the hands of the parents as children grow. You know, when we have a trained police dog, even without a leash, it can just be going around because it's a trained dog. It knows how to use its freedom. You take a bullet train. A train can actually go in a real speed. A bullet train can go in a real speed when it follows the tracks. So our children need to understand that they have to follow tracks set by the school and the parents. Sometimes a river, it breaks and comes beyond its boundaries. That is the time when there is a tsunami. So we need to tell them that there has to be a boundary. You can raise your volume so much. You can talk so much. You can use only these words. You cannot talk about mommy and daddy like this. You cannot cross the road when there is a red light. You cannot rebel against the government. even if we do not like it. Laws are not meant to be broken. Laws are meant to be kept. Another principle we need to remember: when we teach our children, when we discipline our children, do not correct your children in a crowd as much as possible, because they carry a lot of hurt, they carry a lot of shame, and that becomes a major block for children to lose that correction that you may have given them. So call them aside, sit with them, correct them in private, use gentle and loving words. That will be very, very helpful. Now, there are some parents who can be really authoritarian. There are also a group of parents who are extremely permissive. Authoritarian parents say, you should not do this, you can't do this. There are a lot of no's. Only what they say is the rule, and children's creativity are absolutely put to death. But then there are permissive parents who allow children to do anything. You can do anything you want. There's absolutely no rules in the house. We have to strike a balance here. You can be authoritative and you cannot be a permissive parent. Children have to understand that parents are our reference point. Parents have to understand that the Bible is our textbook and it is our reference point. And that is how what we read in Hebrews chapter 12 verse 11. No discipline is pleasant at the time. No child is going to enjoy it. No medicine is going to be tasty at the time. But that is what is going to keep our children safe. So whatever we allow our children to do is going to continue. Whatever we allow is going to continue. There are quickly 4 principles when I want to talk about discipline here. One is the principle of consistency. Consistency means every time a child goes wrong, please correct the child. You correct the child once and the same mistake is happening again, you leave it off, then there is no consistency in your discipline. So be consistent in your discipline. Number 2, contingency. Correct your child only when there is a mistake. Don't keep on correcting your children. Overcorrection can also cause a lot of rebellion in children. Immediacy. When children go wrong, don't delay too much. Immediacy is an important principle in disciplining. Oh, I'll talk about this later. I'll talk about this 10 days later. I'll talk about maybe next month. His mood is not all right now. All that can be taken into consideration, but don't postpone your discipline too much. And the fourth principle that we understand in discipline is clarity. Sometimes we scream and beat and spank children, but children do not understand why we are upset. So there has to be clarity. So sometimes till the child is 6 or 7, till we can use this cane, if you can make your child sit down, calm your emotions first, calm yourself down and tell your child that mommy told you this once, daddy told you this twice, teachers told you this thrice, but you did not listen, you have done this mistake again, so you're getting a little addi, you're getting a cane. Okay, so children will understand that mommy is not angry, daddy is not hitting me because he is angry, daddy is only hitting me because I made a mistake. So do not correct your children or discipline your children in your anger. Now we talk about punitiveness a little bit. Punitiveness, if it can be the last resort, that is your caning or your beating behavior, that does help. That is definitely biblical, but how we use it, the way we use it, don't use it in your anger, don't use it when you are charged with your emotions. That is what Ephesians chapter 6 verse 4 says, explain your mistakes. Fathers, do not exasperate or provoke your children. When you do that with charged emotions, children get really provoked, and sometimes when we hit our children, children can change their behavior out of fear. We can achieve change, but we may lose the child. We may lose the child. Children, relationship, communication, appreciation, encouragement, disciplining, everything has to be beautiful. Everything has to be done well. But then don't be scared to discipline your children. Be patient and don't be scared to discipline your children. Okay, now that is very, very important. This is very important that you train your children early. Train your children early. There are many homes where I have seen They feel children are, babies. She's only 2, she's only 3, she's only 4, and there are a lot of grandparents who come in the way of disciplining children. Oh, she's a little one, she's a baby, she'll outgrow that. No, my parents, our days are becoming evil, so we have to start training them early. This is a very strong biblical principle, because Hannah, we see in the Bible, trained Samuel very, very early. She sent him to the temple when he was a little boy. David taught Solomon at a very tender age. That's what we read in Proverbs chapter 4 verse 3. David taught Solomon when he was in a tender age. We also read about Timothy in the New Testament. Timothy had a mummy and a grandmother, Lois and Eunice. Both of them had a Bible school for Timothy, and they taught him the scriptures, and the faith was transferred to him. That's what we read. So they brought God to the commonplace for them, and they taught the Bible to them. They taught him how to behave. They taught him how to, have some flexibility in habits. Now we are talking about early training, early corrections, early disciplining, because once certain habits are set, once you have allowed certain things, it is very, very difficult, because children do get set in their ways and they get confused. My daddy and my parents, when my teachers were quiet when I was doing this when I was young. Why are they making such a hue and a cry suddenly? So have some flexibility before some habits are ingrained. That is very, very important. Okay, now the next thing we are going to talk about when we talk about parenting and child rearing and bringing them up in grace is something which we usually ignore. Now this issue is talked about 24 times in the Pauline Gospels. We know the Pauline Gospels. 24 times Paul has mentioned this. This is the word called conscience. Conscience. It is very important that we spend a lot of time training the conscience of our children. How do we do this? It is possible by training their conscience, by feeding them with values, teaching them values, instilling values. How do you do that? You can't suddenly do that overnight, just before a child is getting married, just before a child goes to school, or just after a child has made a mistake. That's not how we teach values. It has to happen daily. It can happen on the dining table. It can happen during our family prayers. It can happen during our walks. It can happen during family cycling time. It can happen during carom board times. It can happen during chess games. It can happen anytime. But just keep teaching them values. Choose nice words. Choose pleasant words. Don't be always instructive. Let your tone not be preachy all the time, but be very sweet, very graceful in the way you talk, but keep on teaching your children. Values have to be pumped in as much as possible, because children will soon leave the house. The bird is going to fly out of the nest very, very soon. After that, we have absolutely no control over our children. Then we do not have an opportunity to teach them. When they are still with you, please do teach. Now, there is something very physiological that is happening when we talk about conscience. This conscience actually is a cognitive process. This is something which happens in the ventrolateral frontal cortex of the brain. I repeat, it happens in the ventrolateral frontal cortex of the brain. This is the place where the decision making happens. My parents and teachers, I want to encourage you. Do you know something? When you discipline your parents, when your children, when you teach your children, when you spend time with your children, this part of your children's brains actually get transformed. You have to teach them what is right and what is wrong. When you put that into this part of the brain, the cognitive process of decision making becomes very different. It becomes very mature. It becomes very good. They do not choose between good and bad. They choose between better and best. So you can actually nurture them beautifully. What an awesome responsibility God has given into our hands. What a sensitive responsibility God has given into our hands, my friends. Do you know kids, even when they are 2 years, they know what is right and what is wrong. So it is already there. Children are born with a conscience. So we have to teach them what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes there are very, very difficult decisions they have to make. Sit with them and tell them, this is what the situation says. This is what you feel is right. But what does the Bible say? Our value system comes from God's word, because that is the gold standard for our children. That is the gold standard for our school. That is the gold standard for our family, and that is our ultimate Google. You want anything, you get stuck anywhere, you don't know what to do about in this situation, Google the Bible. The Bible will tell us best. It will never guide us wrong. Now this conscience is the internal rational capacity. So it teaches you how to rationalize according to God's word. We read in Isaiah chapter 30 verse 21. Your ears will hear a word. When you turn to the left or when you turn to the right, your ears will hear a word. Now, how will your children's ears hear a word unless you put it in? Our children's brains are like computers. We have to keep feeding them values, keep teaching them God's word, keep telling them what is right and wrong. Let it be there. It's all sown inside. God will send somebody to water it, and God will bring it to fruition. He will bring it to nurturance. And then when children get stuck, when they are in crossroads of their life, at that time they will hear this word. Their ears will hear a word. Mommy and Daddy told me about this verse. Something like this is written in the Bible. Let me Google it and find out. That is how they learn to understand. Romans chapter 2 verse 15 says, the work of the law is written on their hearts. The work of the law is written on their hearts. So when you train your children's conscience, the work of the law has to be embedded in our children's hearts. So that is the value of the value system that we understand. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about when we talk about children is, our children do keep failing. And we do keep failing. Now, when we all learn to cycle, I don't think anybody just like that started off cycling. We do fell, we had some bruises, we had some bleeding, we had some fractures, but then we ultimately learned to cycle. We may not know how to get into cycling, we don't know how to apply brakes, we may fall, we may go and bang somewhere. But then, when we remind them of failures, children lose their self-esteem. When we remind failures. So children have the freedom to fail, but they do not have the freedom to understand that they are always failures. So when we talk about failures to them, tell them that failure was only an event. The child is not a failure. You are not a failure, but that event or that incident or that mistake was a failure. That is something we need to understand when we keep reminding failures. You did this yesterday, I corrected you yesterday. You asked for forgiveness yesterday and you're doing it the same. You've not changed at all. Last month I talked to you about it, but you've not changed at all. There's absolutely no change I see in your behavior. You're just like your father, you're never going to change. You're just like your mother, you're never going to change. When we throw such words at children, they lose the meaning of forgiveness. Oh, mommy said, I forgive you. But they lose the meaning of forgiveness. And they do not understand, can God forgive me also? Okay. So when our children fail, please be there as a pusher. Please be there as a pillow. Because children, they do fail in relationships. They do fail when they take efforts to change their behavior. They keep failing. They may fail in academics. Maths may not be their best subject. Science may not be their best subjects. But keep telling them it is okay to fail. But keep on trying. If you fall to the ground, it is a failure only when you stay there on the ground after you've fallen down. Just get up. That's what the Bible says. A righteous man will fall 7 times. He'll keep making mistakes, but he keeps getting up. The Lord keeps lifting him up. That is what we need to tell our children. Paul says, I am the chief of all sinners. I am the most difficult person, but God chose me. He cleansed me. He sanctified me. He justified me. And now He's put me in His most important ministry. So that is what our children have to hear from them. Forgiveness is so important. When I talk about forgiveness and the failures that we talk about to children, I remember a word that is called hugs. When you forgive your children, please hug your children tightly. Tell them you love them. Tell them you've forgiven them with all your heart. Tell them that you really love them and you do not have anything against them. Why am I saying this? This is biblical. Forgiveness and hugs has a lot to do with each other. I have quickly 3 examples for you. One is Esau and Jacob. They both had a problem called sibling rivalry. Absolute fighting, jealousy, betrayal, threat. I want to kill this man. I want to finish it off because he took away my blessing. But then Jacob realized, I am going to go and hug my brother Esau. I am going to ask forgiveness. And he hugged him. And both of them became the best of brothers. Another example I have for you. The prodigal son did a major mistake. Major mistake a son shouldn't be doing. But the father was right there waiting for the son to come. When he came, the forgiveness started with a hug. They did not discuss. So much you wasted. You went with so many women. You made so many mistakes. I told you not to do this, but you did not obey me. I begged you not to do this. You did not listen to me. Absolutely no discussion, no words. The dad just hugged the son. That was the meaning of forgiveness. And another example was Joseph. Joseph's brothers were absolutely jealous with him. They sold him, threw him in a pit with no water, and he had a difficult time in Egypt for a long time. But because he was faithful, the Lord lifted him up, and God brought his brothers to a place where they came to Joseph for deliverance. And Joseph had to turn his face aside, cry, shed a few tears. He had a lot of opportunities to say, see, this is what God can do. See, I told you about my dreams, but you didn't listen to me. See, now I am going to give you a raise. You are now at my mercy. I can kill you. Joseph had an opportunity, but he didn't do that. He hugged his brothers. He hugged his brothers. My parents, my teachers who are listening to me, if your forgiveness has to be real, give them physical hugs, because that is what biblical heroes have done. Let your children understand, daddy and mommy will stand with me. Even I make the biggest mistake, mommy and daddy will stand with me, but I have to face something called a consequence. That is something you have to keep teaching them. So discuss the children's failures. When you teach them about failures, tell them, last time you failed like this, but last time you did 1, 2, 3 things. This time let's have a clear plan as a family how you cannot fail. Let's have clear plans. So discuss the failure as an event, not as a person. That's something you need to understand. Okay, now children have a lot of fear to fail. They have a fear to fail. They are scared. What if I make a mistake? What if I lose? What if I fall down? What if I fail in mathematics? It's okay. It's okay, because parents are supporting me. So that creates a lot of negative feelings in children. So please be there with your children and tell them that it's okay to fail, and it is very important that they learn from their failures. Another mistake that we as parents do when we teach children about failures is that we keep talking to them about our strengths. I never did this when I was your age. I was very good in mathematics, you know. I was very good in drawing, you know. I was my teacher's pet, you know. I was this and I was that. We keep bragging about ourselves. But our children are very clever. They go to our grandparents and they will ask, did mommy do this? Did daddy do that? And then grandparents say, hey, your daddy failed 4 times in mathematics. Your mommy failed 4 times in 12th standard. And then they laugh at us. So don't keep talking only about your strengths to your children. Show them reality. Tell them that you have also failed. So children will understand. Okay, now in Mark chapter 17, we see that only a person who does not do anything will never have a failure. A lazy man will never have a failure. But a person who keeps on attempting to do things will have failures. Okay, Abraham failed when he was not willing to wait. When Sarah was not willing to wait, he failed. Moses had a problem with anger, we saw. Peter failed when he denied Christ. David had a problem with morals and he was a failure as a dad. Elijah was depressed. All these people have had failures in life, but they did not sit in their failures. They did rise up. That is what we see. So when children are scared to bring their report cards to them, to us, to parents, it is because we are not handling failures well. So when they bring their report cards, when there should be no forgery, parents should give them a good, safe place so that children will be able to tell you, Mommy, I couldn't do maths well today. Maybe next time I'll try my best. So they should have the courage to show you their report cards. That's very, very important. Okay. Now we also have to teach our children something called resilience in the face of failure. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. It's okay. I have fallen down. It's a trampoline experience. I go down, I come up, I go down, I come up. And parents have to be that trampoline where children can feel safe, and that's very important. Another important thing is, do not compare your children with anybody. Do not compare your children with anybody. We've seen that children are absolutely and perfectly unique, crafted by the best craftsmen. So they have to find acceptance in the home for who they are, for what they are, with all their weaknesses and with all their strengths. I have a little example for you. Now Jacob cannot become an Esau. Esau cannot become a Jacob. Jacob and Esau were twins, born to the same parents, but both of them were very different. They looked different, their personalities were different, their hobbies were different, their skills were different, their future was different, their planning was different, their cognitive processors were different, their thinking faculties were different, everything was different. But then they were compared. There was a lot of favoritism in the family. That is why there was a lot of sibling rivalry in the family. Esau cannot become a Jacob. Jacob cannot become an Esau. Go to a mango tree and tell the mango tree, I will give you the best soil. I will give you the best fertility. I will give you the best water. I will give you good sunlight. Will you give me guavas? Will you give me oranges? Can a mango tree give us anything else? A mango tree can give us only a mango. An orange tree can give us only an orange. How can we go and ask Sachin Tendulkar if you can perform a surgery? Many of our parents make this mistake. We want our children to become doctors or engineers. We do not tap their potential. We want to push our dreams into our children. My parents, please be sensitive. Many suicides today are around still. Children contemplate killing themselves because they are not able to handle that pressure at home. I have talked a lot about this particular academic and societal pressure and parental pressure in a YouTube channel which is called Evangeline Stanley. The title is called The Pressure of Pressure. Please listen to that. I am not talking about that too much, but we do expect our children who can be fishes to climb a tree. You know, a fish is called to swim. A monkey is called to climb a tree. A bird is called to fly. What are our children called to do? Don't compare your children with anyone. Your children's strengths are unique. Your children's potentials are unique. Tap that, because many times when we do not do this, we increase lot of hatred within themselves, and these children become bullies, and these children become aggressive, and these children start withdrawing from parents, and that's very, very sad. So as parents, we need to understand that God has given each of our children an ability to understand. He has given us a limitation. So our wisdom is to discern that limitation and to understand the difference. We have a beautiful example in the Bible. There was the mother of James and John. She went to Jesus. We see this in Matthew chapter 20, verse 22. She went to Jesus and said, Lord, I have a desire. Yes, Mary, what is it? She said, I want my James to be on your right and John to be on your left. One child to be on your right and one child to be on your left. Jesus said, you don't know what you're asking. They cannot drink from the cup that I'm asking. And I cannot decide where I put your children, because it is the will of my Father. So my parents, let's take this as a very personal message from the Lord. Our children cannot become what we want them to become. If we do that, we are taking them away from the will of the Lord. If our children are skilled in something, develop that potential after a basic education. Let them develop in that, let them grow in that, let them do a PhD in that, let them become research scholars in that particular subject, and then they will be inside the will of the Father. But if they are not able to be faring well good in science, and we give them 30 or 40 lakhs and buy us a medical seat in Russia or China or Philippines or wherever, and then we make them become a doctor, they are not in the center of God's will. So we should not make our children lose God's will, and that is very, very important. And one other thing I want to tell you is, when you parent your children, even teachers, you are parents first, because before your teachers. When you parent your children, let there be unity in your parenting. Review often if your own marriage is secure, because insecurities in your marriage can spill out as difficult parenting in your children. So when there is unity in parenting, children feel very, very secure. I say this because when mommy says no, daddy says yes. And children feel, I become daddy's pet then. And children start manipulating. They are very good. So when mommy says no, daddy says no. When daddy says no, mommy also says no. But when children come and corner you with something, like for example for a sleepover, you say, mommy and daddy will discuss, we will talk about it and we'll get back to you. So children will understand that there is a security there. Mommy and daddy are standing together and we cannot take them for a ride. So that is very, very important. Okay, now when this happens, we need to understand that when parents are unstable, when your own marriage is unstable, we do produce unstable children. And that is very important, something we need to understand. Review often if your marriage is secure. Now I say this because there is a lot of anxieties in our marriage, and security is a mutual need. Security is a mutual need. Husband wants to feel secure, wife also wants to feel secure. But as the marriage grows, as the first love diminishes, as the honeymoon stage goes off, as the commitment fades off, as the faithfulness becomes less loyal, slowly what happens, there are extramarital relationships coming in, secrecy is coming in, a lot of other issues start coming in. Children keep seeing this. So parents, as husbands and wives and teachers, please do take your marriage very, very seriously, because children are watching and your marital relationship is going to spill out in your parenting. Now, when we take certain things in our marriage for granted, there is something called complacency. We take so many things for granted. Now, there is a beautiful example in the Bible in Judges chapter 8, verse 11. It says, Gideon went up by the road, he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. Gideon went up by the road and he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. The Midianites felt very, very secure. They thought, Gideon has gone off. Now we can sleep. Now we can relax. We may think that in our marriage. My husband is a very good man. He will never look at women. My wife is a superwoman. She will never make mistakes. She will take care of the home. I don't have to share my responsibilities. So every load is on her. She may be sitting on a lot of stress. Too much on her. We take a lot of things for granted. But then this is the time complacency creeps in. That is the time the devil came in. You know, when you stop appreciating your wife, when you stop appreciating your husband, when you stop taking responsibilities in the home as spouses. Once upon a time, roles where this is for the husband and this is for the wife. It's not like that anymore. Husbands have to wash dishes. Wives have to do certain things outside the home. It is very different now. We have to change according to our times within the limitations of the scriptures. Do not take anything for granted. When the Midianites were complacent, when they felt secure, Gideon came in. So we need to be careful. That is when our enemy will come in. So be very, very hyper vigilant. Be careful. If there is any drifting apart in your marriage, take it seriously. And here we are. I want to tell you this morning, I am a psychologist willing here to help you. As my number appears on the screen, you can always call us for confidential help if you have any problems within your family on child rearing or on in your marriage. You can always call and talk to us. Another aspect we need to remember when we bring up our children with grace is the aspect of role modeling. There is a lot to talk about here. But then I want to tell you, my parents and teachers who are listening to me, many times we give a talk and then we walk away. But then they are watching our walk. Children are watching us. They are born without social skills. There is so much they are watching. So please be good role models. You know, your life is a powerful tutor. It's not do what I say, it is do what I do. It's not do what I say, it's do what I do. That is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 1. He says, follow my example as I follow Christ. What a guts he had to say that, huh? Paul was able to say, follow my example as I was following his Christ. So teach your children with integrity and with all seriousness. In Genesis chapter 27 verses 7 to 11, there is a warning. You know what happened? Isaac lied that Rebekah was his sister. Do you know where he learned to lie from? He learned to lie from his father, Abraham. Abraham did the same thing to Sarah. When the king was watching, he said, this is my wife because she was pretty. So our sins can be learned. Our mistakes can be learned from our children. So there is a $1 million question for us here. Can my children emulate or imitate whatever I do? My behaviors, my words, my extramarital affairs, my relationships, my relationship with my wife. Tomorrow my son is going to become a good husband watching me. Tomorrow my daughter is going to be a good wife watching me. What are we teaching our children? And receive corrections from your children. Parents, teachers, when you go back home today, when you are at home, please sit with your children. Ask your children, my children, I have not spent time with you, but please tell us today, where have we gone wrong? Do you want us to correct ourselves anywhere? They may have a long list that may come as a slap on our faces, that may come as shocks. It's okay, let's take it. Let's work at it one at a time. They will be revealers to you. Teach them to correct you now and then with a lot of respect. When they correct you, don't be defensive. Don't argue. Take it well. And that humility which children see in you, when that parental pride is flushed off and then that humility is there, children respect that humility, and that is very important. One last thing I want to tell you, when you teach children to relate to the opposite sex, it is so important that you teach them to distance themselves emotionally and physically and psychologically, because media and the social networks are so tempting these days. Teach them defense skills. When you appreciate them at home, when a stranger appreciates them in the public, and when somebody is going to behave with them badly or erratically, teach them to defend themselves. That's very important. We have a beautiful example in Genesis chapter 34 verse 5. Here is Dinah. Dinah was only 13 years. I don't know how much she was taught about sex. Maybe she was not. She went alone. She went to see her friends. On the way she was raped. And the Bible says Jacob was quiet. Jacob was a passive parent. Jacob was a passive father. Very, very sad. And then the brothers had to come and take revenge on the rapist of Dinah. But I have a little thought here. When Jacob was able to be quiet when Dinah was raped, how was he not quiet when Joseph was set to be murdered? See, there is a stigma there. We do not talk about sex to our children. Please talk about sex to your children. Tell them about bad touches. Tell them about good touches. Tell them about how far you should keep a stranger. What is the distance you should keep with the opposite sex? Please do teach children that. Children do have behavior problems. When there is a behavior problem in children, always use this principle. This principle is called ABC. It's called the ABC analysis. I cannot leave you without telling this. A is antecedent, B is behavior, C is consequence. Before every behavior, there is something which happened, something which provoked them. So before you correct their behavior, please find out what happened. If the child has not done the homework in school, or if the child is lying to you, there is something which happened prior. Please find out. And if you are going to be quiet about it, that will be the consequence. If you do not discipline, that will be the consequence. We are allowing the child to carry on with that behavior. Instead, if we can correct the child, that will be a consequential correction. So please do find out why children behave the way they behave. There's something we need to understand here. Beneath every behavior, there is a feeling. Beneath every feeling, there is a need. Beneath every behavior, there is a feeling. Beneath every feeling, there is a need. Let's not work on the symptom. Let's work on the need. What is that need? Find out what that need is. Is it a need for encouragement, love, respect, acceptance, unconditional love, security, self-worth, significance, failures? What is it? What is that need? If we can cater to that need, the feeling will change. When feeling changes, behavior also changes. Another thing why children have behavioral issues is because there is something called an amyloid beta in our brains that keeps us from the Alzheimer's disease, lowers the Alzheimer's disease. This is a protein which removes all the excess fats. Now our brain is kept clean by the cerebrospinal fluid. That we know. But then our brain housekeeping, which means the psychological issues of the brain, that will be cleaned only by something called sleep. When our children do not have peaceful, good, secure sleep, then that is also a time when children can bring it out in their behavior. I know a family, I am talking to that family now. A couple of days ago I was talking to them. Both the parents had a major conflict, throwing things at home. They were breaking things and they were throwing bad words at each other, nasty words for each other. Do you know what both the children were doing? They were screaming and crying and begging their parents literally, "Mommy, don't fight. Daddy, don't fight. We are scared." And that one child went under the cot and hid himself because he was so scared to face the father. So my parents' behavior problems always have a background, always have a history. So we need to be very, very careful here. And before I conclude, I want to tell you that we have a lot of surprises in our children. A class topper can become a good homemaker. A backbencher in our class can become an entrepreneur. A fashionist can become a lawyer. An ignored Joe can become a good journalist or a writer. A person who is failing in maths can become a fashion designer. A child who always stood outside the class can become an army officer. So every child will have a story. There is something which comes from the child in layers as success comes in. My parents, my children, my friends, my teachers who are listening to me, God has a specific plan and a purpose in our will for our children. Let's not dampen that. This is an awesome responsibility that God has given to us. Let us hold it with reverence. Let us treat it gracefully, and may God give us that wisdom to handle our children, discretion to understand our children. Sometimes we may feel, oh, my children have grown up, it's now too late to change. I cannot change myself. There is no time which is too late to change. No, my friends, you can always change. Start with one day at a time, one thing at a time. We cannot become angels overnight. We can always start change. So as parents, please do kneel down by your bedside. Hold your hands as spouses. Ask the Lord for wisdom. Lord, we are living in evil days. We are living in a difficult cultural situation. We cannot understand our children. Give us wisdom. Give us special grace every day to understand our children and to bring them in the knowledge of the Lord. Go home, spend a time of reconciliation with your children. Ask your children, if we have wronged you, if we have hurt you, please do forgive us. We want to become better. Tell us where we go wrong. When we do this, we can become our child's best friend. May the Lord give us that grace to become a good parent. God bless you.